Ever since the beginning, Logic's MIDI environment was the way to customize Logic, using the object-oriented programming tools available to create custom macros and add MIDI features that the program was otherwise lacking. Eventually, Logic added MIDI plugins, including the Scripter plugin, whose JavaScript-based programming language offers another way to create custom MIDI processes. Each offers certain advantages and disadvantages. Apple hasn't added any features to the environment in years, which suggests they're looking more to scripting for Logic going forward. But they're still both useful tools for adventurous tweakers who want to add extra MIDI capabilities or custom features. Over the years, I used the environment extensively. A lot of the environment patches I devised were tools to extend the capabilities of Logic's EXS sampler, adding more advanced features it didn't have at the time, like random or round-robin sample selection, a more musical legato response, and exclusive groups, like for hi-hats and cymbal chokes. EXS has since added all those features, slipping them in quietly over several updates, but there are still a few things that I find I need to turn to the environment for that even scripting doesn't seem to handle. In this last video, I'm going to look at an example of that. I have several older piano libraries that I really like, but which lack some of the more sophisticated features that most modern piano instruments include. Specifically, small, subtle touches like the sound of the damper pedal, and more importantly, the resonance from the piano lid that's picked up by the mics, which adds an extra richness to the sound when the pedal's depressed. I managed to rig up an environment patch that can add both of those features to any sampled piano that lacks them. I utilized 3 channel strips, starting with the main instrument channel, which I used mostly for several third-party EXS-based pianos that I like. I used another separate instrument channel strip just for the 2 samples of damper pedal noise, pedal up and pedal down. I could have just added those to the piano key maps themselves, but I wanted to be able to quickly swap out any pianos that would benefit from the added features without having to remap them, and having the pedal samples in a dedicated instrument strip allows for that. The third channel strip is an aux, which hosts an instance of Space Designer, Logic's convolution reverb plugin, which is loaded with an impulse response of piano lid resonance. These 3 channel strips are cabled together in the environment so that the effects will be applied to whatever piano I load up in the main instrument channel. It's not so easy to move to another Logic project, but for projects that I start from my own template, it's there, as long as I load any piano I want to use it with into that first instrument channel. Here's how it works. In the environment's mixer layer, you'll find channel strip objects for all the channel strips in use in the project. For this patch, I usually keep the extra 2 strips hidden in the main window, since I only need to see the main instrument strip. A cable from that main instrument strip goes to an ornament object, just used as a cable mult. In the environment, the order of processing is determined by position, with top cable paths being processed first. This can often make a difference, so it's important to keep track of it. Here, the top cable goes through a series of real-time transformers, eventually routed to the aux strip with the Space Designer Piano Resonance IR. The bottom cable goes through a different set of transformers, eventually to the second instrument strip to trigger the pedal noise samples. The resonance path starts with a cable switcher object, which functions as a bypass switch for the resonance effect. It's not really necessary, but it was useful when initially building and testing the patch. Another ornament distributes the MIDI data to 4 transformers, which are set to kick in the resonance whenever a MIDI sustain pedal message, control channel 64, is received. The way the patch works is that MIDI sustain messages are converted to Logic fader events. These are internal Logic messages that correspond to, among other things, functions on the channel strip surface. In this case, the fader events used are for the bypass buttons on the instance of Space Designer and a gain plugin that follows it, which is set to work as an audio mute switch for the resonance channel. The 4 transformers make those conversions. The first converts sustain pedal down, CC64 value 127, to a fader event with a value that bypasses the gain plugin, which allows the resonance sound through. The second turns the Space Designer bypass button off, allowing audio to flow to the plugin via the bus 8 send from the main instrument strip. Any notes played while the pedal is down will be sent to Space Designer to be processed with the resonance IR. Since the dry signal in Space Designer is muted, as with any send and return effect, this adds only resonance to the piano notes. The other 2 transformers do the opposite. The third converts MIDI sustained pedal up messages to the fader event that turns the bypass on for Space Designer, killing the resonance, as would happen when you release the pedal on a real piano. And the last transformer converts pedal up events to the fader event that turns bypass off the gain plugin, effectively muting the resonance channel. The resonance is mixed in subtly, but it adds a nice extra richness to pedaled notes. Note that each of the transformers is set to filter out all other MIDI data except the data being processed, to avoid a lot of stray MIDI messages flying around unnecessarily. In theory, the patch should require only the second and third transformers. Just switching bypass on and off for Space Designer makes the effect work as intended. But I noticed some soft clicks when the resonance kicked in and out, so I added the extra gain plugin to work as a channel mute switch to eliminate them. The second half of the patch is simple. MIDI from the main instrument channel is again sent through a cable switcher to an initial transformer, which simply filters all MIDI except for sustained pedal messages. It distributes those messages to 3 transformers. The first converts MIDI CC64 pedal messages to note messages, note number C3, which is the note map to the pedal down sample. Since there's no specific value, both pedal down, 127, and pedal up, 0, are converted to C3 note on and note off messages, respectively, as the pedal is depressed and released. The next 2 transformers convert pedal up messages, CC64 value 0, to note number C#3, mapped to the pedal up sample. The first triggers the sample when the pedal is released, and the second simply provides the note off to avoid hanging MIDI notes, which can cause problems even when there's no audible stuck note. The pedal noise samples are set to one-shot mode, so they both play through the full samples, which are short, making the note on, note off timing non-critical. As with the resonance, the level of the damper pedal sound is mixed in quietly to be barely perceptible, but if it's too loud in a particular part, it can be easily tweaked with the channel fader for the pedal strip. When MIDI scripting was introduced, I set out to recreate this setup as a script, which could be more easily moved between Logic projects, but I ran into some limitations. I was able to recreate the pedal noise easily, but I had to settle for a compromised version of the resonance feature. So for now, I'm sticking with the environment version when I use piano instruments that benefit from those added features. So that's just a brief look at the creative application for the environment and the kinds of considerations that may come into play. And that'll wrap up my 3 Logic videos for this unique course. Hopefully, there was something interesting in there. Now, enjoy the rest of the course.